2, 1. Welcome to another edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. I am your host, Louis Sung, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Chad Ronenbaum. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The NFL owners meeting was today, and Adam Gase was there, and there was a lot of stuff to talk about. Let's see. There's a lot of stuff talked about with Deion Jordan, Walt Aikens. I mean, the list goes on and on here. He talked about Kiko Alonso. He talked about Byron Maxwell. And he talked about Cameron Wake. He talked about Ryan Tannehill. In fact, I don't think there's a player that he didn't talk about at this point. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, and a lot of stuff regarding Adam Gase said about Ryan Tannehill. There was a lot of stuff from Stephen Ross. There was a lot of stuff from Mike Pouncey over the past week. And not to be ignored, the Miami Dolphins also signed a guard. Oh my God, people, a guard. They actually signed a guard. Let me see if I can pull up his name. I can't actually pronounce it without actually looking at it, so I have to find it. I believe it's something along the lines of it's a weird name. He was a guard for the Buffalo Bills. I need to get this up here or something. I don't know. Hang on. This is a terrible start to the show. Say something, Chad. Distract me. Distract people.
Well, I haven't covered every single transcript or anything like that, but I have been paying attention to what's been coming out of the owners' meeting. And, some of the things are interesting. One is, as always, I don't believe Stephen Ross is a stupid person. And I do believe he wants the Dolphins to win badly, but he just never does well when he talks. That's just what I've come to believe from him. And so him kind of coming out and saying Ryan Tannehill didn't have the support he needed basically from the coach, which, for all intents and purposes, he's pointing the finger and saying Joe Philbin wasn't giving Ryan Tannehill the support that he needed, which, is very true. But, chronologically, if you want to step back in time, the biggest mistake the Dolphins made was retaining Joe Philbin after those first 3 seasons and bringing him back for what essentially was a lame duck. And obviously, that happens in those scenarios. And I know nobody probably remembers me mentioning that at the end of the 2014 season, but I said that the risk you run with doing that is what happens when you lose the first 3 or 4 games, you lose the team. And that's what happened with Philbin. And, everybody's been negative on us losing Olivier Vernon and negative on us losing Lamar Miller. And that was a decision that lost those players. It wasn't Mike Tannenbaum's fault, because if you're Mike Tannenbaum and you have a coach coming in that's basically in a lame duck year, it makes it hard to, sign Olivier Vernon and Lamar Miller at the beginning of the 2015 season, which is what they would have needed to do to realistically keep them. And so, to me, when I hear Stephen Ross, coming out and basically throwing a little bit of blame towards Joe Philbin, I'm thinking, that was your decision to keep him that extra year. And so I thought he came off sounding a little bit foolish in that regard. In terms of Gase, I did find interesting he's planning on keeping Cameron Wake on the left. He obviously said it really what it's all about is Cameron Wake getting healthy. But I fully believe that Cameron Wake is days as an every down defensive end in the NFL are over. I think he's going to become more of a pass rushing specialist. And then I predict that Mario Williams will actually be the left side defensive end beside Ndamukong Suh, because together they'll create some very difficult matchups for one side of an offensive line. And what I suspect will happen is whenever they're in an obvious passing down, 3rd and long or 2nd long even, that's when you'll see Cameron Wake come into the game with the sole purpose of trying to rush the passer, which throughout his whole career he's been good at anyway. But I thought I would make that kind of point out. I don't think Cameron Wake's going to come in and be the left defensive end to start the year. I think he'll just be used in a limited rotation to start anyway. Signing the new guard was nice. He looked like more of a depth guard to me.
And I finally found his name.
I couldn't pronounce his name, so I'll let you do that.
It's Craig Urbick.
Okay.
Urbick.
Yeah, obviously he's a veteran lineman, which is a good thing because depth is always nice. And I'm getting the feeling, especially that signing more and more, that as disappointed people are, I don't know that we're going to get any new guards in here this year. Maybe they'll draft one in the middle rounds to come in and compete as well, but they've got a lot of guards on the roster right now. And so Gase, in that interview he had, kind of alluded to that, what he wants to focus on is getting the current guards in better condition, make them stronger, and, or in other words, basically trying to improve what he has. So whether you like that or not, I don't know. But my general thought, though, with just a touch on the guards, I think it's way overplayed right now, and I'm really not too worried about the guards. And in fact, I think the bigger issue with the offensive line the last few years has been the tackles, and not that I don't like Brandon Alberts and Juwan James. How frequently have we actually had those two together playing healthy? Either Albert's been hurt or James has been hurt, and that's led to the Jason Foxes and even the Dallas Thomas playing tackle. And that's what's really hurting our offense, because it's hard to play guard if you're against or beside a tackle that's struggling. And so I hope that with Bushrod that he's a capable backup at tackle. I believe he's better than Jason Fox anyway. And so I'm hoping that they've improved their depth at tackle, and that in turn will help them out at guard a little bit as well. But for those of you that are really wanting them to go after the guard, it's looking less and less likely with the draft, because clearly with the C.J. Anderson going, and obviously Lamar Miller's gone, they're going to have to address the running back situation, which I believe they're planning to do in the draft, and they desperately need to address the cornerback situation, which I believe they're going to do in the draft, and so that makes it hard for them to use a high pick anyway on a guard. So it's more than likely going to be a mid-round guard getting thrown in the mix with what we have, and that's what our 2016 guards are going to look like.
And I don't even know if I have a problem with that, though, Chad, because with the new coaching in place and supposedly all these improvements, and then we see Adam Gase has this swagger and he's calling out reporters for having bad sources. We still don't know who it is. We all make an assumption, but we don't know for sure. But we see Adam Gase has ideas for Tannehill. He's bonding with Tannehill. Mike Pouncey really seems to like him. Everybody seems to be getting on board with whatever it is that Adam Gase wants to do. They like his vision. They like his style. They like the way he's doing things. And that isn't to say they don't like Joe Philbin. He's a very, very nice man. But they are buying. It really seems like they're buying into whatever Adam Gase is selling. And I would think that after all this time spent, like, they wanted Dan Campbell to come back so bad. They loved Dan Campbell to death, and they all of a sudden turn around and say, we really like Adam Gase. I feel like, and I'm not saying again, and I don't want to suggest that guard is suddenly just not important, but I would like to stress the point that because we have a new coach in place, one with an idea for making sure that the players get to use the best of their abilities rather than trying to stick them someplace they don't. We have a new coaching staff with a lot of well-known people like Clyde Christensen and then Vance Joseph, who has a lot of potential and supposedly could have been a defensive coordinator not 1 but 2 years ago. And so the Dolphins got their choice of head coach. They got their choice of defensive coordinator, and Clyde Christensen is a well-respected guy in the league. He was with Indianapolis for I don't even know how many years. And if you don't have that kind of longevity if you're not good at what you do. So I look at this situation and think that, well, even with the guards, it's kind of a clean slate. And we see Billy Turner. Billy Turner, like, everybody wants to look at Billy Turner and say he sucked because the guards sucked in general. Billy Turner did not suck. He was actually really good at what he did when he got the opportunity to do what he was good at. When he was run blocking, he pushed people out of his way. It was with pass blocking, then that was a problem. Then you have somebody like Jamil Douglas. He didn't get to play much guard. He got to play center, which is something he is terrible at, obviously. And I don't think he had ever played center before in his life up until the game against what was it, against the Cowboys? Was it the Cowboys game that Jamil Douglas got thrown into the center role and he kept getting low snaps to Tannehill?
Yeah, and I absolutely can't critique him for that. I mean, what do you expect from a guy that's never really played a lot of center?
He's never played center before in his life, and then the coach is saying, "Go play center." I was like, wait, what? You can't be serious."
Yeah, exactly. But I couldn't agree with you more, honestly. That I've been saying that for the last couple of months, that I'm not overly worried about the guards. I have, honestly, for the most part, given up on Dallas Thomas. I really hope he's out of there. But I believe that with good coaching, that Billy Turner and Jamil Douglas would be just fine at guards. They're both powerful men. They both are very athletic men, and I don't know. I mean, I think Alex Boone would have been an upgrade, obviously, but he also would have been a pile of money to pay a position that doesn't typically demand a lot of money. And so I don't know that they did the wrong thing by not just running out and grabbing a bunch of, free agent guards that, aren't going to be stellar anyway, rather than work with what they have and go from there. I think I see about as much potential in Billy Turner and Jameel Douglas than the most of the guards that were on the free agent market anyway.
Except for the choice few that you mentioned, people like Boone or Kalichi Asamele or those kind of guys who were the elites. And Evan Mathis already latched on to another team. I think he's with the Arizona Cardinals now, and he's only for $3 million. But I digress. I think why everybody gets a clean slate. Tannehill has a clean slate, at least for this year. He gets, and Jay Ajayi is a clean slate. Parker and all those guys, clean slates, because it's a brand new offense. It's a brand new way of doing things. A brand new philosophy has come into play, and that could affect the guards as well. Now, granted, I think we may have done a downgrade actually in coaching offensive line only specifically, because Chris Forster has not had a good reputation as an offensive line coach. Everywhere he's gone, it hasn't been a pretty sight. But then you have Jeremiah Washburn acting as the assistant offensive line coach, and his father, Jim Washburn, is now officially part of the Dolphins coaching staff, even though it was later debunked that he was going to come at first. I mean, it feels like it was like something like 2 months ago that the Dolphins announced that they were, the Dolphins didn't announce it. We assumed via other reports that we were getting both father and son from Detroit, and then it found out that only Jeremiah was coming, and then later, Jim Washburn shows up, and he's going to be the pass rush specialist. In other words, the only reason he's there, in my opinion, is because Ndamukong Suh likes him, and he gathers a lot of respect around the league, so he's there to kind of be some more bite to the coaching staff there. So I see everything as a clean slate, and that includes the guards. Now, there's going to be, and I don't blame anybody for this, there's going to be that lingering doubt. This idea of, well, it doesn't matter what coaches are in there. It's still those same terrible guards. It's still that same terrible offensive line that has failed to keep Tannehill upright for all the 4 years he's been in the league. Dallas Thomas is still a bad guard. Billy Turner is still unproven. Jameel Douglas is still unproven. And then you have like Jacques McClendon, and then you put Jermon Bushrod. Supposedly he's going to try and move over and compete at guard. And then you bring in this guy, I already forgot his name. Let me just clean it up here. It's Craig Urbick from the Buffalo Bills. And you have all these guys here now, and like none of these names are going to wow you. Now, Urbick, for his credit, has started for the Bills in many different games. He hasn't started recently all that much, but I don't know if that's maybe because he's been hurt. I don't know much about this guy other than that he started for the Buffalo Bills for several years. So if I'm looking at this situation, just like from a very outsider standpoint, I haven't looked at much he's been able to do just yet. I would look at this situation like, let's at least give these guys a shot. Sorry about that. Anyway, so I want to give these guys a shot, and I also want to give a shot to the guy who just called in. It's Keith, and he's here to be our third panelist. Hello, Keith. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Not much. So we're just basically talking about the stuff that's been happening around the Dolphins earlier. We talked a little bit about what Adam Gase has been saying. Right now we're talking about the offensive line and Craig Urbick. Do you know anything about Craig Urbick other than that he has a very hard to pronounce name if you don't know it, if you didn't memorize it?
I like the signing. Right now, it's probably looked at as a capable backup, depending on what the Dolphins want to do. I still think that they probably spend a decent pick in the draft somewhere on the offensive line, whether it's a tackle who will move into guard and then eventually replace, like a Brandon Albert, or if they just go specifically for the guard position. But if you're looking for depth, which has been a huge problem for the Dolphins on the offensive line, it's a good signing. I mean, he was a good player with Buffalo. I mean, it's not anything that's going to wow you, but I would make the case that outside of probably Alex Boone, I don't know that any of the guards available in this free agent period would have had that sort of wow effect anyway. And the guard position isn't something that typically presents that regardless. So, I mean, it's a good signing. These guys are starting to hedge their bets in terms of what they want to do on the offensive line. And I mean, going forward, I mean, there's not really much more you can ask, especially when you look at the injuries that this team has had up front in the past couple of years. So I look at it as a really subtle step toward what this team wants to do up front. Nothing splashy about it, but I like it. I think it's a good thing.
And it should also be noted that Craig Urbick, since he was cut by the Buffalo Bills, does not count towards the ever-precious compensatory pick formula, which seems to be what Miami is actually specifically working towards in this free agent period. They don't want to lose that third and fifth rounder they got from losing Olivier Vernon and Lamar Miller. So, again, this is this a conservative? This is a very, very conservative free agency for the Miami Dolphins, and I feel like fans are kind of freaking out because it looks like that the Dolphins literally have no plans at all, and it's bothering people that they haven't bought a high-priced guard to go protect Tannehill. And I understand that completely. There's always the idea, once again, we're going to be competing between Dallas Thomas and Jamil Douglas and all these nobodies that nobody knows. But like I said earlier, it's a clean slate. We have Adam Gase, a coaching staff who actually seems competent so far. We haven't actually seen them coach yet, but at the very least, it seems competent. There isn't any. When you've brought this up several times, Keith, in the past, that when Joe Philbin was signed, you were just like, ugh, I can't believe this, and you pretty much knew from the start that it wasn't going to be pretty. But that is, and pretty much now with Adam Gase, you're having the opposite reaction. You think this is going to be a great deal. So my thought process is that, with the exception of Dallas Thomas, because I will never forgive Dallas Thomas. I swore that last year, and then he oppressed me in training camp, and I got fooled. I'm not falling for it this year if he does happen to get good again. So I want to point that out right now. So if anybody sees me tweeting at training camp saying Dallas Thomas did a good job, please don't say that I'm flip-flopping. I said I'm not buying it. I just have to report what I see. So with that said, I want to give most of the guards a clean slate. Jamil Douglas could still be good. We don't even know how good he can be yet. Billy Turner has shown a lot of potential, and even when he has played well, when he has played badly, there have been some good plays to go with it. Let's see, Jacques McClendon is still on the team, so he'll be competing. And now we have Ubrick, or is it? God, what is his name? Craig Urbick. Urbick. Craig Urbick. I'm going to get that in my head before the show is over. Craig Urbick. All right. So there's a lot of stuff going on with the Dolphins. I want to give the guards a clean slate, so that's why I'm not exactly freaking out too much about Tannehill. And let's be honest, if this is really Tannehill's last chance and whatever, and people really want him gone that much, I don't see why we're freaking out so much about offensive line. Isn't it Tannehill's fault that all this went wrong anyway? Isn't that something that we want to happen? Don't the Dolphins want Tannehill to move on so that we can go sign a good quarterback who will actually have pocket presence and all that lovely stuff that we have heard that he can't do? So just a thought, just a passing thought.
Well, on offense, these are just positions that I don't think you should spend huge on in free agency, meaning the backfield and the guard position. And the funny thing about the guard position is it's a position you really should draft. It's a position you want to develop in early because you'll notice that the guard market, the top-notch guys, that market gets out of hand really quick. You think about some of the deals that have been handed out over the years, like Steve Hutchinson, like Jari Evans. These guys got just massive deals, and I mean I love the offensive line. I've talked about this before. I would draft offensive linemen all the time if I thought I could get away with it. I love it. I love bringing them in, developing them. I love the blue chip guys, and I also like the project guys, the ones that. And if you're looking at Miami's current guard rotation, I think if you come in and look at Billy Turner, he's immediately your high upside guy. He's got an insane ceiling as an offensive lineman, a lot of untapped potential, really sort of a mediocre output with the Dolphins thus far. But I've mentioned on other shows that if the Dolphins are lucky, he didn't spend enough time with Joe Philbin and company. And, I mean, something I also mentioned yesterday, and I truly mean this. It's one thing to kill the Dolphins' offensive line on technique, and yeah, there are a lot of technical issues, especially if you're looking at Dallas Thomas. But I think really what they're missing outside of Mike Pouncey is there's just no nastiness, no grit, no tenacity out of this crew, and it's something where it's contagious either way. And right now, the unit the past few years has just played soft. Like they're out there, and there's not a lot of meanness out there. So if you're looking to bring in one of these, you know, Josh Garnett was the guy who talked about how nasty he played at Stanford, which is kind of interesting when you think about Stanford's history with offensive linemen. But all of that is to say that I think that the Dolphins have some really good guys. I think they have a good guy in Billy Turner. I like Jameel Douglas. I think that there's a lot of untapped potential with him. Dallas Thomas he already talked about. I think that any potential he had was pretty much snuffed out by the Philbin crew. But no offensive line coach on the planet I think could help this crew because it's just there's a lack of attitude up there. And I don't even see it as much from Mike Pouncey these days. So I think that's one thing you're looking to add this offseason and through the next few seasons. You want to get that really nasty disposition, that grit, that tenacity that the really good offensive lines out there have. Like, you know, the ones where they're not taking any crap. And the Dolphins' offensive line has done nothing but take crap for the first couple of years. So I think you're looking for a tone setter, too, in addition to some guys who are really capable at the guard position and perhaps at the tackle position, too.
And speaking of the tackle position, I believe it was the owners' meeting was today, and there was a lot of interesting little tidbits coming from Adam Gase, who was there. And I just want to read some of the stuff that was said, and some of the stuff that was said was about Jermon Bushrod, who was, of course, with Adam Gase while he was in Chicago. And essentially, that Gase said that there is no guarantee that Bushrod will be moved inside. Gase said that he wants Bushrod healthy first and foremost, and then he will see how things go in OTAs and then later in training camp. So evidently what he's doing is he's bringing it feels like he's just bringing in his guys, and he's going to see what happens there. He apparently played as a big tight end with the Chicago Bears. After a while he was the starting left tackle, and then he lost his spot because of injury. He played right tackle, he played center, then he played a little bit of guard supposedly. He played everything in in practice. And so Bushrod is a very versatile player, and if push comes to shove, he would probably be a much better backup at left tackle than Jason Fox, since Bushrod apparently did a good job with the Bears until he wound up getting hurt. So it's kind of like a Alex Smith gets replaced by Colin Kaepernick kind of deal, I guess. So that already is somewhat encouraging. So as long as Bushrod can stay healthy, then we already have depth at tackle that we didn't have before. And then with Ubrick, you have did I say it wrong again?
Yeah, Urbic.
Somewhere somebody's screaming at me, I'm sure. So Urbic, he's a veteran guard. He started many games, and it's not like he's been starting because he's the only one they had. I can't imagine that Buffalo, being known for their play in the trenches, wouldn't have removed Urbic a long time ago if he wasn't at least good. So he's at least a good veteran guard if necessary, and he could push for a starting job. I mean, it wouldn't be hard to replace Dallas Thomas at left guard. At least I hope it's not, because if for some reason Dallas Thomas is starting at left guard again, then even if we don't draft somebody, if he's starting at guard again, then we seriously have some issues with judging the offensive linemen and the trenches in general, because that just screams issues, and somebody needs to be fired. So okay, moving on. Let's see what else we got here. There's a lot of good tidbits from the owners meeting. Let's see. There's Jay Cutler, there's Jordan Cameron. Here's some stuff about the offensive line in general. Oh yeah, here's some interesting stuff here. Ryan Tannehill. If I recall, there was a lot of stuff about what Ryan Tannehill had to say about Adam Gase, and he already feels that Adam Gase has his back and that he will have more freedom at the line of scrimmage. So that has already been confirmed, and the fact that we're talking about it like this, and I believe Mike Pouncey said stuff about this too. It already feels like that Ryan Tannehill is on his way to growing up, as it were. So, Greg Jennings, now no longer of the Miami Dolphins, said that they had to take the bottle out of his mouth and let the kid grow up and start eating some real food. So, I am very happy to hear that Ryan Tannehill is excited about playing with Adam Gase, about being coached under him, about knowing about the offense and how it's going to work. And also, Ryan Tannehill has apparently been speaking to Peyton Manning about what to expect from Adam Gase. So, just thinking about it, the fact that Ryan Tannehill is talking to the computer brain that is Peyton Manning is already a very good sign. And I think he also I think he also studied some of Jay Cutler's tape too. So there are people not as happy about that sort of thing. They're like, "Can you please just stick with Peyton Manning, por favor? Thank you." So, well, I would be inclined to agree with that because I don't think there's anything to learn from Jay Cutler. But what are you guys' thoughts on what's going on with Ryan Tannehill?
I think Tannehill will be improved. Again, the people that are like get rid of Ryan Tannehill are just insane, in my opinion. I'm not opposed to bringing in another quarterback if that opportunity somehow is there. I know it's very difficult to get that opportunity, but if you're watching the quarterback market right now and what's going on for quarterbacks like Brock Osweiler and Osweiler, if I said his name right, I'm as bad as Lewis when it comes to pronouncing some of these names, but Kirk Cousins.
It's been a bad day.
I mean, these guys to me are obviously probably not rated above Ryan Tannehill. I wouldn't feel as comfortable with them. Like if we had Tannehill going, I really wouldn't want to replace him with Kirk Cousins or Brock Osweiler. Or is that? Am I saying that right? Is it Osweiler?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, either one of those guys, I don't know that I'd replace them, and they're getting mammoth contracts for what they know, what they do, and so like I said, if the Dolphins cut Tannehill, he'd probably become the highest paid quarterback in the league. That's how desperately teams want quarterbacks right now. The Cleveland Browns would offer him the moon. I mean, right now they're trying to decide, do we bring in RG3? And so, like I said, I understand Ryan Tannehill is not Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, and those are the guys that win a lot, but you got to develop those guys to get them. And getting rid of Ryan Tannehill right now, to me, is just, it makes absolutely no sense in the world. I mean, what's your game plan is to replace him with Matt Moore and draft an unproven rookie. And so anyway, to get that part out of the way, again, I'm like, get rid of Tannehill. His contracts doesn't justify even getting rid of him. So I would keep him unless you were pretty sure you had somebody that was better than him. With that being said, I still strongly feel the play calling was absolutely horrific this last year. Whether that's Philbin's fault or Laser's fault, none of us are really going to know. But I think that alone is going to help Ryan Tannehill tremendously. And I think Gase, that is what his strong suit is. His strong suit is being an offensive coordinator and helping quarterbacks. So to me, it's an upgrade in the sense that 2016 Ryan Tannehill more than likely is going to be better than 2015 Ryan Tannehill. Not how good 2016 Ryan Tannehill will be is anybody's guess, but I don't see him getting worse under Gase.
No, I think you'll see an exponential increase, and the reason for that is you already saw in that Gase presser, he talked about how he's going to do things with Ryan Tannehill that Manning and Cutler weren't necessarily big fans of in terms of offensive approach, throwing the football, routes, and everything, which shows you right there that Adam Gase is already seeing something in Ryan Tannehill and looking to work to his strengths. And I feel like Tannehill's going to continue to be the whipping boy for Dolphins fans who simply see what they want to see. Because if you look at his numbers, I had some guy arguing with me last week about how your typical Twitter battle about how Ryan Tannehill will never be good at throwing the deep ball. And I think he was 8th in downfield accuracy over, I think it's over 20, 25 yards.
He beat Tom Brady, that's all I know.
That kind of shoots the narrative right there that, well, apparently that he's in terms of throwing the ball downfield, he was he had the 8th highest completion percentage. So, and if you look at his highlight reel, I mean, there were plenty of good throws he made downfield last year, and he's starting to make bucket throws too. But all that to say that you're going to have people who are going to continue to say that he's not that good. We should throw him away and get another guy off the quarterback tree that grows out behind the practice facility in Beatty, evidently. So at that point, all you can do is you got Gase in there. Gase has made it clear that I like the term that he has his back. What we know now about the Philbin regime, it's clear that was a spineless regime. Let's just call it what it is and what it was. Those guys were never going to go to bat for Ryan Tannehill. The fact they wanted Derek Carr over him is still kind of befuddling. But you have people who are going to look at that and think, well, this guy's just not that good. And I think that you're going to find out sooner than later how good Ryan Tannehill is under Adam Gase. He's going to play to his strength. Already, the way that the routes are set up in Adam Gase's system, how everything's coordinated is a far cry from what you saw with Philbin and Laser. So I think right off the bat, that's a win. But I would place heavy money on the fact that you will not see a regression. I think you'll see him take a considerable step forward because I think that, on his worst day, he's he's the 15th, 16th best quarterback in the league, which would put him in the middle of the pack.
Well, if you look
and
at
if he plays really well, you're talking about a guy who could maybe crack the top 10. And if you're Miami, that's great news considering the offensive talent you have on the offensive side of the football right now with the receiving core and hopefully the offensive line as they continue to move along here. But you're going to, it's just, even if he plays well, you're going to have detractors. I don't know that I've seen a more polarizing figure in the NFL playing wise.
Tim Tebow.
I can't remember the last time. It's really weird. No, Tim Tebow did very few things well. It's like if you put anyone in front of Ryan Tannehill's tape and say, watch it, if they didn't know anything about the guy, the good and the bad, you would show them. There's no way they would come out of it saying, like, yeah, that guy's one of the worst quarterbacks in the league or the worst. There's a lot of media people in South Florida, and there's a lot of fans, too, who believe just that. So at that point, like, you can't even bother because if you don't know what you're looking at, then, that's that. But I think that, he takes a significant step forward with Gase. As well the offense, too. And the bigger hope is you just want to see him take less punishment, too, because 183 or 184 sacks in 4 years is just too much.
Which is why everybody wants a guard so badly. We have a caller on the line. It's our good friend Tony. So, Tony, what's going on, man?
Hey, not a whole lot. Just listening to y'all guys a little bit here tonight talk about the owners meeting and the present situation with the Dolphins. And if you don't mind, I'll chime in on what y'all guys are saying about Ryan. The thing that I want to see with Ryan is I want to see him given a fair chance to succeed. I think you've seen flashes with Ryan. Does he have shortcomings? No question he does. I think his pocket presence leaves a lot to be desired sometimes. I think sometimes he takes sacks that he doesn't need to take because he just doesn't fit the pressure sometimes. But also, I think we need to be careful with Ryan because Ryan could be getting close to David Carr syndrome. And you know what I mean by that is, not only has Ryan been sacked, I think you said 180 plus times, but how many more times has he been hit?
Pretty much every snap.
The one thing you can say about Ryan Tannehill is he's tough as hell because he's been pounded. And I think maybe, myself included, people that are concerned about the guard situation is because we want to see Ryan given a fair chance to succeed and be able to stay upright and not get pounded as much. Some of the guard moves, I think obviously Miami tried to make a run at Alex Boone and then get that situation done. I do definitely think they're going to draft a guard. I did a mock draft here recently, and I've got them taking Vidal Alexander in the second round, the kid from LSU. A big physical road grader type that is quick enough that he can get to the next level and get to linebackers and secondary personnel. Sorry, guys still there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No worries.
But, I do think Miami's going to take a guard. I agree with you about the situation with the tackles needing to remain healthy. Obviously, Brandon Albert, that's been a problem with him since he's been to Miami and actually when he was at KC as well in his last few years. And obviously, the situation with James getting hurt last year didn't help because obviously you brought in a Siv and Jason Fox and everybody and anybody got past him to pound Ryan. So I think we all understand the concerns about the offensive line and the guard position, but I think Jamil Douglas can play. I think, like y'all guys mentioned, he got put into a difficult situation, and I think after that first game, I thought he was pretty decent at center, considering he's never played offensive center before in his career. So I thought he was, considering everything, I thought he played decently. Billy Turner had his moments. Dallas Thomas to me is just, I'm sorry, he's straight deaf. He should be nothing more than someone that's brought in when somebody is hurt and and at that point you're praying, oh my God, and Dallas is coming in. But to me, Dallas is just, he's a deaf player. The guy that we signed from Buffalo, I think, has more of a chance to be a player from Miami than Dallas Thomas will the remaining part of his time with the Dolphins. So, I mean, I understand the concerns about the O-line and wanting to see Ryan succeed because I think Ryan's got a ton of talent. I think he's got no arm talent. I think he's tough. I think he's physical. I think he's smart. And I just think there's been things conspiring against Ryan since he got to Miami, mainly a.k.a. Joe Philbin and Mike Sherman for his year or two here, and then obviously the offensive coordinators that we had last year that didn't help the situation any. So I'd like to see Ryan with a clean slate with a guy like Adam Gase that's, has worked with quarterbacks and they sing his praises from Peyton Manning to Jake Cutler. I think he's imaginative. I think he uses all the weapons that he has. I mean, part of his discussion today was getting Kenny Stills more involved, getting Jordan Cameron more involved, the tight ends more involved. I think maybe part of the reason Lamar Miller ended up leaving was because Gase wants to use a stable of running backs and not just a dominant running back. And I think Lamar has said he wants to be the guy, which, he's going to be that with the Texans. But I think for Ryan, he's gotten a break with Adam Gase being brought in because I think Adam is going to help him take his game to another level. But I think part of that is going to have to be better line play for Ryan. You got to stop getting this guy beat to death. And I think if you do that, I think you'll see Ryan take off.
And I think a lot of what you're saying is perfectly good, man. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on with Tannehill. There's a lot of stuff going with the offensive line, and it all connects some way or another. And actually, Tony, you feel like sticking around for a while?
No, I don't mind.
Sure. Okay. So since now that he's gotten in his words, any comments, Keith?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything he said. Definitely shortcomings you always hear about, like the small hands, the pocket presence needs to be sharpened. I mean, if you watch Ryan Tannehill's tape, his first 4 seasons, and I think Gase mentioned this. I mean, he looks cautious. He looks like he doesn't want to. He's playing not to lose at times, and I think that that's something that hopefully Gase can go ahead and shake him out of. One thing that I think Adam Gase is going to, it's related to Tannehill, but I mentioned this last week, and I really believe this. I think probably the offensive player who sees the biggest boost through Adam Gase's system is, in my opinion, it'll be Kenny Stills. I think that if you look at what Adam Gase is able to do in Denver and Chicago, Kenny Stills is the kind of guy he'll use to open up the offense for everyone else. That sort of quicker player underneath who can also do damage out on the perimeter. I think he'll use him to get better looks for Devontae Parker and Jarvis Landry. So kind of the same way that he used Emmanuel Sanders to open things up for Demaryius Thomas somewhat in Denver. I'm also looking forward to hopefully some of those perimeter pick routes that they were using in Denver. I love those plays that those guys ran to an absolute perfection. So I agree with Tony. I think that if you watch Ryan Tannehill play, there's a lot to like. And now you're just looking for somebody to put it all together. And the Dolphins think it's Adam Gase, and I think it is too.
Yeah, I agree with you, Keith. I think Tannehill and Stills both will benefit from Gase. I mean, I like I said, it's hard for me to impress how bad I thought the play calling was this last season. And I don't know why it was. It didn't seem as that bad in prior years, but last year it just seemed horrific. From a complete disregard of this game situation and what your percentages are and the types of plays you call. But with that being said, I definitely agree with Tony's sentiments on Tannehill, and I definitely agree with his sentiments on Dallas Thomas. It blows my mind. Dallas Thomas was playing as much as he had. I know he's got more experience, but he's extremely susceptible to the bull rush, and I believe Jamil Douglas he stands up much, much better for that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that whether it's a new arrival or a draft pick or Jamil Douglas, I'm hoping that at least they beat Dallas Thomas out because he's often a culprit that got Tannehill about killed. I know the Redskins game was one in particular where the guy just ran right over him and went in there and caused a fumble. So anyway, that's my general comments on what Tony had to say.
So now we're gonna move on to another topic, and Tony, you can stick around, man. We'd be glad to have you on. So Adam Gase was asked about Byron Maxwell, what kind of scheme he fits best in, and he said essentially that Maxwell would fit in the scheme really well. Presumably, it's still going to be zone. What he did in Seattle was being aggressive on the line of scrimmage, and apparently they're saying that he will press and be able to play aggressive. So so I'm starting to get some mixed signals here regarding what it is that Byron Maxwell is going to be doing, because unless I am mistaken, what he did in Seattle was not necessarily press. He was a zone corner. That was what he got the giant contract to be a number one corner. That's what he was paid to do. It was to be a zone corner, and they made him a press corner. It didn't work out so good. But I'm starting to get some mixed messages here. I mean, do the Dolphins think that he's a press corner? Do they think that he is a zone corner who can play press? Do they think he's a press corner who can play zone? I'm honestly not sure what Miami is thinking right now with Byron Maxwell. And I want to see if I can get some insight on what's going on here. Guys, what exactly was it that Byron Maxwell did in Seattle? Was he playing zone, or was he playing man coverage in a zone scheme? I don't understand what's happening anymore.
Well, I mean, first of all, Lewis, that's like that's just not how it works. I mean, you don't just play press, you don't just play zone, you don't just play man, because if you do, you're just going to get torched, because guys like Tom Brady, they're too sophisticated that you have to mix your coverages all the time. Otherwise, you're in trouble. And so Byron Maxwell is capable of doing both. He did excel in more of a zone scheme in Seattle, but you got to take the overall picture with that, because Seattle's defense he was playing in was exceptional, and that's part of the reason Richard Sherman was such a hot name, a couple years ago, because Seattle just got after the quarterback, and it's much easier to play zone defense when you have a really intense pass rush. So I think that aided Byron Maxwell. My personal opinion is why Miami did go and get him is they just, because of the Coyle scheme per se, where Coyle tended to want to play a lot of zone defense, where you would let somebody catch it in front of you and then react, or you would try to react on the ball in front of you. I think they're getting away from that a little bit. And a lot of it, like if you noticed last year, Brent Grimes struggled, but Brent Grimes was struggling against big, physical, fast wide receivers. And I think they felt they needed to get a corner in that they could match up, with a Dez Bryant, or match up with an AJ Green, or maybe ask to cover Gronk. And so they needed a bigger, more physical wide receiver. And that's what Byron Maxwell is. Now, I wouldn't say he's an exceptional tackler. I wouldn't say he's going to be a guy you can put press man on and leave him on an island like you might be able to do with somebody like Darrelle Revis or something. He's not that sort of a guy, but he's a solid, big corner that you can match up. I don't believe they're bringing him and expected him to be a number one shutdown corner. I think they're looking at him as a specific need they had in the personnel they have to be able to work with matchups, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it would be a similar setup to what they had in Seattle when at his most useful, he was a number 2 guy. And for most of his time there, he was a number 3 guy. But, Chad's right on when he says that. I don't think Miami's going to treat him as the number 1 corner. Like, he's not your big-time number 1 defender out on the perimeter. You're not going to see that from him. But he is a very, very good number 2 in the right situation. And I think the Dolphins have the right setup for him, Vance Joseph specifically. So, but he does have certain gifts that lend really well to playing press. Number one is, and a big reason why they were concerned about his shoulder is you want to have the ability to get up there. He's got the length to jam. You want the strength. You want to be able to reroute guys. You want to be able to disrupt them at the line of scrimmage and funnel them inside. Typically, if you've got the linebackers getting those hook routes underneath, technically. So he's got the length for that. He's a bigger guy. But, I mean, when they were worried about his shoulder, that was the first thing I thought, that you want that upper body strength. You want that ability to hold up and punch with some of the bigger receivers in the NFL, and certainly the guys in the AFC East. So he's always going to be zone type guy. He's got good short area quickness. Chad mentioned he's not like an incredible tackler. He can throw big hits, and I'd say he's a capable tackler. But I mean, he's stiff laterally, which is why he'll never be a man coverage sleuth like some of these guys. I think that you saw some gifs that went up via Bleacher Report where they were examining his strengths and weaknesses, and one of them is the fact that when you just expect him, try to give him moving laterally, it's just not. It doesn't end well. So if he's in zone, more often than not, he's just staying with the receiver in his initial stem, and he's either able to funnel him out to the linebackers, or he can go ahead and expect safety help over the top. So, but yeah, it's not something where you don't want him moving laterally all over the field. That would be a nightmare with Byron Maxwell. But I do think that in Miami's system, there is potential to become a really good number 2 guy.
Well, I didn't mean to suggest that I thought he could be a number 1 guy. I never suspected he would, and I didn't think that Miami was bringing him in as such. But my understanding was that Byron Maxwell was going to revive his career by going back to playing in a zone scheme. And every time I've heard somebody talk about Byron Maxwell now, it's because they're talking about how he's going to be able to play press, and that's something that Philadelphia Eagles fans and Philadelphia Eagles reporters and all those experts were saying that that's exactly why Byron Maxwell flopped, is because he was playing press, and that is what's concerning me.
I'm sorry, Liz, I couldn't hear you there.
Okay, so essentially I said that. Sorry. Anyway, what I said is that what a lot of people, I didn't mean to say that he could be a number 1. I never suspected he could. I didn't think that's why they were bringing him in. But every time I've heard somebody talk about Byron Maxwell now within the organization, it's been about how Miami sees him as somebody who can play press. And looking back on what Eagles fans and what Eagles experts were saying, that's exactly what Byron Maxwell flopped at doing. And the assumption was that going back to zone would revitalize Maxwell. But if they're talking about him as a press corner again, isn't that just kind of doing exactly what Eagles failed to do?
No. If you're able to mix it in, I mean, as Chad said, you're not just going to play zone all the time. It's going to be zone heavy for sure. But I mean, you're still going to mix in other looks, and one of those, and the way you're able to disguise your coverages. Because if Tom Brady knows that Byron Maxwell is in zone 100% of the time, guess what? Tom Brady's going to just absolutely slaughter that guy. But what happens if you're able to mix in your coverages? You'll see plenty of times where guys will bluff press, and then they get into either like an off man coverage. They'll get into a bail. You'll see them bluff coverages. So I mean, you can't depend on him to do one thing. And there is ability to play a press heavy style for Byron Maxwell. But if you're playing that most of the time, and you expect him to be a man coverage corner, then no, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But there is capability to do work in that scheme. But no, not something you would lean on.
Okay, so that's just something we're going to have to remember. Tony, since you're here, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I agree pretty much with what he said just now. You can't play off zone coverage all the time against quarterbacks like Tom Brady and the league because they'll see it and they'll pick it apart. I agree that, you have to give different looks in your zone coverage. You can come up and, like you said, bump at the line of scrimmage to disrupt the timing and then drop back into your zone coverage. The interesting thing about this is a kid that is very good at bump and run coverage that's out there in the draft is Mackenzie Alexander, the kid from Clemson. He fits in well in regards to press man coverage. The question about McKenzie is, can he pick up the zone concepts? I think he can, because I think he's such a technician. He works hard at what he does in regards to studying and working on his technique and working studying the receivers that he's working against. I think McKenzie is going to be one of those type guys that can adjust to both man and zone coverage. In regards to Byron, I think this system, like y'all guys have been saying, is going to be good for him because, to me, when I think press coverage, I think press man coverage all the time. And that's something that Byron does. He can't be press man all the time because that's just not his strength. He's got good speed. He doesn't have great speed. I think Julio Jones sort of exposed him from that standpoint in the first game of the season against Atlanta when they played. I think if you put him in the Seattle type of defense and sort of like what Vance Joseph wants to do here with Miami, like he did with Cincinnati, I think Byron is going to have a bounce back year. But if you asking him to play straight bump and run coverage for an entire game, no zone concepts, then he's going to get exposed again, and that's and that's what he struggled with in Philly. But in Miami, they're not asking him to do that. You can be aggressive and still play zone coverage. You can still get up in a guy's face and bump him and disrupt his route and still play zone coverage. And I believe that's what Miami is looking to do.
Okay, so thanks. Okay, we actually have another caller on the line. Tony, don't hang up. Okay, but I do want to know who this next caller is. Caller, reveal yourself, por favor.
David.
I'm sorry?
Oh, my name is David.
Oh, nice to meet you, David. So, what's on your mind today, man?
So, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to chime in on Ryan Tannehill, if that's still the topic.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think, with two guards protecting him, you might see a different player. But the concern I have about Ryan Tannehill is that he doesn't seem to have the eye of the tiger down the stretch. He doesn't seem, at times you see him fiery, but he doesn't seem unhappy if he comes off the field after a 3rd down and 3 they don't make it. He doesn't seem to be frustrated. He's like, okay, I'll just get it next time. There just doesn't seem to be any fire in the belly. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
Before my panel chimes in, I just want to go out on a limb here. Your nickname wouldn't happen to be Oob, would it?
No, but I used to go by Donald Dave back in the 70s.
Okay, I was just checking because another guy I know. It's like, okay. All right, so Chad, why don't you take this one first?
I think it's an excellent point, David. I actually was close to mention that when Keith was talking about him, and Keith's point being that there was a guy saying that he can't throw the long ball, which if you're paying attention, Ryan Tannehill throws the long ball just fine. My opinion is Mike Wallace can't run consistent long ball routes. That's why Ryan Tannehill struggled
in Minnesota.
Ryan Tannehill did just fine throwing the long ball last year. He definitely has a more than adequate NFL arm. But I think where criticism is justified is Ryan Tannehill does not have good pocket presence, and that's part of the reason why he does take so many sacks is he doesn't have a good feel for feeling when he needs to slide left or right or up in the pocket. And so I'm hoping that with Gase he can develop that, but I agree that he's unproven. Part of that is this where the team has been. They've been in very few significant ball games, and I don't know how many seasons that Ryan Tannehill has played where they've actually been in the playoff run. The last game of the season, maybe 1 or 2 of his seasons. And so when you don't play in those type games where it's a minute and a half left and you're down 4 points and you got to drive him down the field, I don't know what we have in Ryan Tannehill. I don't know if he is going to play his best when it's on the line or if he's going to fold. And we're not unfortunately going to get to know that until we can get into more of those situations where he has to, because I think it's a legitimate criticism that Ryan Tannehill has not closed out many games. There's been a lot of games where our defense had to just hold out and win the game so we could, run the clock out. We've missed a lot of opportunities, and a couple years ago, I remember the Green Bay game. I remember the Detroit Lions game, where our defense took a lot of heat because the other team got down the field and scored at the end of the game. But the reality in those games were that we had won the game. Our defense had shut them down and given Ryan Tannehill and the offense the ball back, and all we had to do was get 1 or 2 first downs and run the clock out. And we proceeded to go 3 and out in those games. And so I think
the play calling was insanely conservative when that happened, though.
No, I
both
agree
those
with you, Keith. I don't think the play calling and the coaching was stellar, but at the same time, definitely Ryan Tannehill did not hit some, amazing throw to do it. So I think that's something that we just don't know yet. It's crazy to think he's in his fifth year, and we just don't know how he's going to do when the game's on the line.
It is crazy to think in the fifth year. That's a great point. I guess in a nutshell, though, and thank you for addressing addressing that piece. But like how Jarvis Landry, he's got that it factor. I just feel like that's missing with Ryan Tannehill. I want him to go off on the field and get in someone's face a little bit more often, or go back to the sidelines and just be like really, really angry kind of thing. Anyway, thanks for taking my call.
No problem, David. Glad to have you on. Call back anytime.
Thank you.
I'm guessing David was a Marino fan, because I remember, Marino is a lot like Tom Brady is now, where he was just a monster to be around when they were playing poorly. And so, I think every quarterback has their own disposition and the way they operate. And I don't know that Ryan Tannehill is ever going to be a guy that comes over to the sideline and kicks the water cooler over and gets in a brawl on the sideline. But, I would say he's more along the Peyton Manning mentality than the Marino one. But anyway, that's my comment.
David, do you want to stick around? Hello?
Lewis, I think we're losing you again.
Hey, Lewis, you're extremely hard to hear right now.
Oh, sorry. I keep as it turns out, I don't know why we're gonna have to work on this little bug here, but when I'm muted, the callers can't hear what I'm saying. So that's actually kind of odd. So we'll have to work on that. Anyway, David was actually still sticking around. I don't know if maybe he was wanting to stay, but he's hung up. So anyway, the thing that I want to address, though, real quick, is this whole idea of it factor. This is the same thing that Omar Kelly talks about all the time, and it really drives me up the wall. What does it exactly mean to have the it factor? It makes you suddenly this beast mode type of player who, when the game is on the line, you're just suddenly going to be like, no, I will end this game, and then you just do. I mean, if that's what you're looking for, that's not something that you can judge on the field. That's not something that you can look at. It's like this magical formula that just you either have it or you don't. And a lot of people who think they do have it then wind up getting exposed that they don't, and then people who you say they don't wind up showing that they do. And it's a weird thing. Like Tim Tebow, I said his name twice now today. Tim Tebow is a quarterback who he sucked. Absolutely, it was awful to watch in the first three quarters. And I'm a Tebow fan. I wish he'd get another chance to play because he can win games. But Tim Tebow is a terrible quarterback in the first three quarters. And then suddenly, miraculously, without any explanation, and maybe it really was divine intervention. Maybe God really did have something to do with this. I don't know. But once the fourth quarter came around, suddenly Tim Tebow didn't suck anymore. Everything started just going his way. Is that it factor? Is that God doing nice things because God bless Tim Tebow and all that stuff? But I don't know. If that is it factor, then I don't necessarily want somebody with it factor. I want somebody who can play well like the first three quarters, and then hopefully by then we don't need somebody to play the fourth quarter like he's on fire. Just somebody who can get the job done. Russell Wilson, they tell me about it factor. He threw, He threw 5 interceptions in the playoff game against the Packers, and then he threw one really good pass, and that was it. And Russell Wilson was the hero of the game, and it factor and all that lovely stuff that people talked about. It's like, really? We had to wait for the fourth quarter after he was awful all game for that it factor to show up and suddenly win the football game? You're lucky that Aaron Rodgers didn't play well that game or whatever. So I'm looking at it like that and thinking, okay, what does it factor even mean? What is your definition of it factor?
It's a reality. It's when the quarterback wants the ball in his hand late in a game, or a guy who you don't want to see if you're the opposing team, you don't want to see the ball in his hands. I would probably use Aaron Rodgers as a great example. He's a guy where, I mean, I wouldn't use the Hail Marys as an example necessarily, although those were great plays, but he just makes things happen, especially late in games. I want to go back, though, real quick, because I think there are examples of quarterbacks who are outstanding in this league without being overly demonstrative all the time. One guy I would use as an example is Ben Roethlisberger. You don't see him typically blowing up usually, and he, early in his career especially, took a beating. I mean, like, he was just absolutely getting laid out all the time. behind that Pittsburgh offensive line. So while you'll see guys like Rodgers who do throw a fit, Brady, you'll see he'll give his offensive line a tongue lashing, or players. I've seen that before. I don't think that that's necessarily a thing where you pair that with the guy's a winner. We'll find out if Ryan Tannehill's a winner under Adam Gase, and that's the important thing. That I don't think it's going to take a lot of time to figure that out. Another thing I want to point out is people would say that Peyton Manning has the it factor. Peyton Manning didn't win a playoff game until his 7th season. So, I think people have really short memories when it comes to the quarterback position, and they think that every player is going to sit there and be super demonstrative, and that means that guy is an incredible winner. You never really saw that from Steve Young. He was a champion. Joe Montana, not really. In fact, Joe Montana kind of had a disposition similar to Ryan Tannehill in that it never really seemed like things fazed him. And like Ryan Tannehill, Joe Montana took an incredible beating, and that's the only comparison I'm making between those two, the beatings and the disposition. So don't read too much into that. But there's plenty of examples of guys who weren't just absolute rage freaks whenever things didn't go right for them on the field. And Roethlisberger is probably the modern example. Joe Flacco is, the guy's a champion, and he's not an incredible quarterback, but, he's been accused of the same thing, where people feel like you don't care enough.
He's soft.
So, you'll see people who will make examples out of all these guys. There are plenty of examples to be had there. But the it factor is real. But the it factor, Marcus Mariota, I think, is going to be an incredible quarterback. I think that in the new era in the NFL, where he's got that great blend of, he's got a quick release, he's decisive, and he gets rid of the ball fast, and he's incredibly accurate. Those are all the things you're looking for in these quarterbacks, that you're seeing these faster paced systems offensively come through. That's the new it thing in the NFL right now. So all that to say that you can find examples of guys who were great winners who acted like complete jags on the field. You can find examples of guys who didn't. The it factor is real. It's also kind of a junk term in that you can just say, well, he's not a winner. He doesn't have the it factor. Well, that's an intangible thing. You find most people have a hard time even articulating or just outright defining what that is. I believe that if you have the it factor, you're a winner on the field. You make guys around you better, and people will immediately say, well, that's not Ryan Tannehill. We'll find out. Now that he's got in a system where he's supported by the guys who are calling the plays, the guys up above him, he feels confident in there. He's got the right players, and now they need to protect them. We'll find out quickly whether he's got that it factor, and if not, Adam Gase is going to know it.
There's a lot of different descriptions on what it factor is, whether it's your ability to make players around you better, whether teams fear you when you have the ball in your hand, whether you just rage and holler off the sidelines, or whether you're just somebody who just has this, this swagger about you, this low-key arrogance about yourself, about how you're so incredible, and how, what was the meme about, like, Jameis Winston giving permission to Marcus Mariota to speak because, like, it was okay for him to talk now because he was finished. That's the sort of thing that people look at things as this it factor, this idea of I'm so awesome and now you will all see how awesome that I am. It's like, if that is it factor, then I don't even know if I necessarily want that, because that was the exact reason why I didn't like Jameis Winston coming out of college. It's this, I didn't like this abrasiveness, this whole I'm so much better than everybody else around me feel. There's nothing wrong with being confident. I have no problems with being confident. Like all these guys, Joey Bosa saying I think I'm the best player in the draft. That's fine. You can be confident, and that's the same thing. But even when he says it, you never got this idea that, like, he really, really believed it, and anybody who told him otherwise was be like, well, you're dumb for thinking that because you are absolutely out of your mind. I am the best, and there's no question. Anybody who questions it is an idiot. That's it. It's a very, very, very fine line with that sort of a thing, and it's that kind of arrogance. I've noticed something about this. People who are arrogant seem to draw in people who are also arrogant. Like, I look at there's just to name a few, like, I don't want to name names because I'm obviously calling people out for being this now, but there's the Miami beat writer that we all know. There is the person who recently left, who was friends with that beat writer. We see other people like I have to name drop this one, I guess. Mike Silver, who also likes Miko a lot. You have all of these people. I have noticed anybody who has this same personality trait, this same idea of look how awesome that I am, and anybody who disagrees with me is wrong, they all seem to attract each other. And Mike Wallace, again, when Mike Wallace was in Miami, you got this sense of arrogance, this air of I'm so incredible, and anybody who disagrees with me is wrong. Is it any coincidence that these same people thought that Mike Wallace was all incredible? Is it any coincidence that they all thought each other was incredible? I don't necessarily want, if that is the it factor that we're talking about here, this swagger, this confidence, this overconfidence, then I don't think I necessarily want that in Miami. You can be confident. I have no problem with being confident. I'd like to think that I'm pretty confident in what I do, but I am not about to go around and tell people that I am so much better than you and you are all a bunch of idiots. So I can't do that. I can't do that. And I'm not going to
Mike Freeman.
No, I mean Mike Silver.
Wait, Mike Silver doesn't. What, he hitched his wagon to her too? That seems weird. I thought he only reports on Hugh Jackson.
Yeah, well. So, what do you think, Tony? Since you're here, I want to know what's your thoughts on my little rant just now.
Well, I think, to me, the it factor is, I mean, you can be both low-key and boisterous and have the it factor. Like, I mean, Dan Marino had the it factor. And Dan wasn't a wilting flower. I mean, Dan would get in your grill and let you know you need to pick your game up. Joe Montana had the it factor. To me, the it factor means, this guy can come out here and do what he need to do, even if he's not having the best of game. Come time to make a play to win the game, he can make a play. To me, that's the it factor. I mean, I'm probably in the minority here in regards to Jameis Winston. I'm a Florida State fan, so I got to watch Jameis, play for 2 years. And Jameis is that boisterous type, loquacious guy. But I tell you what, teammates love Jameis. And Jameis makes plays. I mean, Jameis is a guy that had a very good year for a Tampa Bay team. That offensive line had some real struggles this year. I mean, he took a beating behind that Tampa Bay offensive line, but he's always positive with his guys. He's always, telling his guys, listen, we're going to make a play. We're going to do what we need to do to win this game. And to me, the it factor isn't about being boisterous and babbling your mouth. It's about that guy that can go out and make that play when the game is on the line. Dan could do that. Montana could do that. Brady could do that. Peyton could do that. And Rodgers can do that. To me, that's having the it factor. And, does Ryan have that? I mean, we've seen it a couple times. I mean, the Atlanta game when Miami won late, the Minnesota game when Miami had to keep scoring to keep up with Minnesota. You saw it in that game, but obviously there have been games like y'all guys have said when we didn't see it. The Denver game comes to mind, the Detroit game, like you mentioned, the Green Bay game, where, if Miami could have just ran the clock out. But like y'all guys said, play calling had a lot to do with that too. But, if you've got that it factor, you can sometimes overcome incompetence from a coaching staff and still make plays. Does Ryan have it? I'm not sure, but I want to see if he does have it. I want to see him in more late game situations where he's got to come up with a play for Miami. And at that point, if we see him in that situation succeed more as he's given more opportunities to do it, then we can sit back and say, well, Ryan got it also. Ryan has the it factor. But to me, that's what the it factor is.
Did anybody think, and I don't honestly know this, I would think he did beforehand, but prior to this year, did anybody feel like Cam Newton had the it factor that Tony is describing? We all know that Cam thinks the world of himself. Like that kind of it factor he's got plenty of. But did anybody think that Cam had that description of it factor before this season?
No.
I think the thing that probably held him back most was this year is probably the most polished I've ever seen him as a pocket passer. I think some of the throws he threw late in the year and in the playoffs, I think about that touchdown he threw to Greg Olsen against Seattle. That was just a good throw. And I don't think that's something Cam Newton could have thrown early in his career. Like, he always had the strong arm. The book on him was that he threw too many fastballs at Auburn and early on with Carolina, and he did. And I mean, and he still could take a little bit off of his passes, but I mean, that's who he is. I mean, like, and he looked accurate. He looked decisive with the ball this year. Like, he didn't look like a running back who throws the ball, which I think at times was a criticism leveled at him. I thought he was a really good mobile quarterback this year. And I mean, like, he impressed me. And I'm not a Cam Newton fan, but like throwing the ball downfield and whatnot, I mean, like, he looked good doing it. He looked confident. He looked decisive. And he looked put together, and I mean, everything was there. So I was impressed. So I think that had a lot to do with the success that Carolina had this year.
But my question was, did you feel that he had it before he balled out this year?
Well, I'm linking the two. I think the reason people think he has it now is because he's become a good pocket passer. So now you can go ahead and throw that it. I mean, it's kind of hard to have that it factor when you're not throwing the ball much, or you're not a number one quarterback threat from the pocket. Because, I mean, we found out with Michael Vick, eventually defenses will find ways to take out guys who are mobile quarterbacks. But when you're able to throw the ball and keep them honest, then you're talking about something different entirely. And you started to see him put that together in 2014, and this year was the continuation, even after they lost Kelvin Benjamin. So I think that if you want to link the it factor, it's the fact that he was a winner from the pocket, which people realize, oh, this quarterback can win games under center. He must have the it factor. But the way Tony described it was excellent. I think that was perfect.
How about you, Chad? You haven't said much.
I think the it factor is just kind of a made-up term, I guess. I don't care what level you play at, high school, college, NFL. That one of the reasons I think we love football is football is decided on the field. You know, there's always the hype, there's always the talk, but when it's game time, you're lined up in front of that guy, and none of that stuff matters anymore. It just doesn't matter. That's what's going to happen, and so I don't get too now. Where legends are made of is when you see Aaron Rodgers hit a Hail Mary to win a playoff game. When you see, even though the Patriots lost, it was unbelievable what the Patriots did in that championship game to almost pull that out with the fourth down passes to Gronk and the touchdown pass to Gronk. And I mean, that's big time in terms of being able to play under pressure. I haven't seen Cam Newton be a guy that I would say is in a legendary or a pressure category, if you will, that Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady are in. I do believe that Cam Newton is probably the most special athlete that's played in the NFL, maybe since Bo Jackson. I mean, Cam Newton is unbelievable in what he can do. And he in my mind, when I watch his game, he still seems very immature. He still makes bad decisions. And so what he could become it's downright scary, because his ability to run with speed and power and the strength of his arms to be able to throw the passes that he does, if it does all come together and he gets into that category where he can make those big plays like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, he's just going to be downright scary. And if you want to call that's when he has the it factor, that's fine. But I usually consider, in my personal definition, the it factor is if the season were over, would that guy be somebody you would say he absolutely is a Hall of Fame candidate, or at least the MVP consistently category. I don't think you can just have it in 1 year or one game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Essentially, you can't be a one-hit wonder. So, we're going to wrap this show up pretty soon. I think we'll go maybe another 10, 15 minutes. But I actually want to go back to what I had said about Byron Maxwell, and it's actually about the trade itself, not about the player. Adam Gase was asked whether or not that he was okay with the trade to bring in Kiko Alonso and Byron Maxwell, and he said yes, because even though it dropped them 5 spots in the draft, they did gain two starting players in Alonso and Maxwell. And then he said that they were going to add another one at 13. So obviously Adam Gase is confident they can still get a starting caliber player at 13. And there's a lot of theories running around as to who that could be at this point. A lot of people are thinking Ezekiel Elliott because the Dolphins failed to get C.J. Anderson. They didn't get Chris Johnson. They didn't get James Starks or any of those guys. So right now there's only one running back with even upside. There's no proven running back. So right now the Dolphins are looking at Ezekiel Elliott a lot. People are hoping that I've heard that they're really hoping that Vernon Hargreaves somehow miraculously falls to 13. I don't think that happens. And Tony brought up Mackenzie Alexander. So there's a lot of options out there at 13, and I want to get everybody's thoughts on what the Dolphins' move should be at 13 as it stands right now. And I'm going to start with Tony, and I'm going to ask you, do you think it should be Elliott, or should it be Hargreaves, should it be Mackenzie Alexander? I mean, who are you looking at 13?
Well, I don't think Zeke gets to Miami. I think Philadelphia has a need. Obviously, with the trading of DeMarco Murray, as talented as Ryan Matthews is, you can't count on him to stay healthy. So,
and I think they were trying to get rid of him too.
They were. So I think Philly is going to take him if Dallas doesn't, which I don't think they will now that they signed the running back from Washington. I don't think Morris. Dallas will go. Yeah, Alfred Morris. I don't think Dallas will go with running back. I don't think Zeke gets to us, but obviously if he does, I say you snatch him. I don't think Vernon is going to get to us. I think he's going in the top 10, possibly top 12. So that's why I mentioned the kid Mackenzie Alexander or either Eli Apple. And actually, this is where y'all guys can probably help me out. There's been a lot of talk. I think Tannenbaum might have mentioned it. Is Miami looking to go big again here, sort of along the Bill Parcells line of being bigger, stronger, more physical? Is that the talk with the Dolphins? Because if that's the case, then I'm not sure if you look at a quarterback like McKenzie, even though the Dolphins have talked with McKenzie. They spoke with him at the Combine. So that's why I thought about McKenzie, and I marked him at number 13. But I also remember the talk about Miami wanting to go bigger. So, and I'm going to throw this out also. Miami has become enamored with picks. Obviously, they're trying to protect the compensatory picks that they've got now. And my thinking is that this team is going to definitely look to possibly trade down to acquire additional picks. I don't want to speculate what scenarios are going to play out because it's so early in the process, but I think it's something that they're going to do. But at 13, I'm still going to say possibly McKenzie, but I think you have to look at Eli Apple at that spot. I think it might be a little high for this individual, but I've read and heard that Miami wants a thumper at inside linebacker. So I think that would bring Reggie Ragland into the picture, although I think he makes a lot more sense than Miami does trade down. A kid that I think you can take a look at also that might fit better ball skills is the kid William Jackson from Houston, the cornerback from Houston. I think those are some names that you need to look at. And I like I said, I really do think Miami's going to look to trade down and acquire more picks throughout the draft.
Keith, this is your ballpark. You know now that Tony's a big fan of Mackenzie Alexander. You have not been quite as high on him just for Miami's sake. So what's your explanation?
I think he could be the best man coverage corner in this draft, but he's extremely raw. He's never going to give you much in terms of tackling. I mentioned that he looks like a baby draft taking on ball carriers and whatnot. But I mean, the raw skill set is there. I mean, his hits are as good as it gets. His speed hasn't been timed yet, but I'm willing to bet it's going to be ridiculous. I mean, he's just a natural at the position, but he's very raw, and in a zone scheme, I think you can do a lot better instead of a project. But I understand where Tony thinks, because Mackenzie Alexander has some incredible physical gifts, and he's a technician too. I mean, like in man coverage, he shows some really good techniques. Still raw in a lot of respects, but anyway, he mentioned Eli Apple and William Jackson. I think those guys, if you want to say overdrafted, fine. I think William Jackson's the best zone corner in this draft. I don't think it's even close. I think Eli Apple's a good player. He's more of a physical guy, whereas William Jackson's shortcoming is that he's not much of a tackler. I mean, he can throw some big hits and whatnot. Miami, I agree with the thing about trading down, and the reason for that is Miami's at a weird spot at 13 because they've got the Rams right behind them. I know the Rams claim that they're going to start Case Keenum. I'm not buying their crap, though. I think they want a quarterback.
Wait. They said they wanted to start Case Keenum?
Yeah, they claim he's going to be the starter. So I mean, read into that what you will, but the point is I think the only team between them is Oakland, and Oakland just solidified their left tackle position because they re-signed Donald Penn. They got Osemele on the line too. My dark horse for Miami is actually, I can't remember to say this, but I do believe this is going to happen for a few reasons, and it's Jack Conklin out of Michigan State, and a lot of people are going to be like, what? But the reason for that is I think that if Miami is looking to go best player available, which I believe they will, and Mike Tannenbaum's looking at Jack Conklin, I think he's going to see a ton of similarities to the player he drafted to play left tackle in New York, who's DeBrickashaw Ferguson. I think Jack Conklin is built almost exactly like DeBrickashaw Ferguson and has an extremely similar skill set. So I think that if they're looking to go best player available and he's looking to honestly get the best player, I think he's going to see that guy and draft Miami's left tackle of the future. Because, I mean, if you're on a long-term plan with Adam Gase and you're hoping you're on a long-term plan with Ryan Tannehill, and Brandon Albert probably not a part of that long-term plan, at left tackle at least. And Rudy Ragland's a great, if they trade down, and I think they're going to try to do that because I think that the money round for corners in this draft is going to be the second round. I think like Xavier Howard out of Baylor is going to be especially if they want to get bigger. I think he rolls something like 6'2", 210, somewhere in that range. I mean, he's a big dude, and he's a raw guy too, but he has the ability to play really good in a zone scheme. So I think that Miami's going to try to get another second round pick. And I mean, they could go with an Artie Burns, who'd be more of a project at corner. I'd love to see him in the third round. But I think the second round is where they can really do their damage in terms of adding their corners of the future. But if they draft a guy like an Eli Apple or William Jackson, or even if Vernon Hargreaves miraculously drops to number 13, which isn't completely impossible, but is, as Tony mentioned, highly unlikely. They're getting a really good corner for their scheme, and all three of those guys, well, two of those guys, Jackson and Apple, are bigger dudes. Apple especially. Apple rolls like 6'1". Jackson's, I think, at like 6 foot, but he's like a real long, athletic guy. And then Hargreaves is just built I mean, he's just absolutely jacked in terms of like his lower body. I mean, like he's a bigger dude. Aside from the fact that he's 5'10". So, I mean, they have a lot of options, but I do think that Mike Tannenbaum's going to look at Jack Conklin and see DeBrickashaw Ferguson 2.0. So, just given his draft tendencies, he also likes to draft out of the Ohio State University, which puts a lot of guys in play. Apple, I think Taylor Decker is a guy you can consider. All the linebackers, your Joshua Perry or Darren Lee. I mean, all those guys are in play just based on Tannenbaum's draft preferences. But if I was making the pick, and now that I know that Oakland's not going to take a lineman, I would trade back and I'd make a move. I'd get Tannehill a left tackle he can grow old with.
Would you be opposed? Would you be opposed to Ezekiel Elliott?
Well, no. I think that if you're talking about like the 5 or 6 best players in this draft, I think Elliott's in that class. I mean, he's outstanding. You know, he had like mid 4.4 speed. He's as good a blocker out of the backfield as you'll ever find, and I mean that. That's not hyperbole. He's a really good receiver out of the backfield. I mean, even though he's a bigger guy, he's shifty. But if you had that second round pick, Miami can, you know, they could draft Derrick Henry and get Xavier Howard in the second round, and that's a pretty damn good haul considering that their needs. Or I mean, there are guys who are going to be available on day 3 who are really good. I think Kenneth Dixon is one of them. I think I think a day 2 guy probably is Jordan Howard out of Indiana, who's like a bigger back. I think that they need to get the sledgehammer compliment to Ajayi, because Ajayi brings a good amount of shiftiness. I mean, like he can be an elusive back to a degree. So I think you're looking to get the hard edge compliment to him. And there are plenty of guys in this draft who can serve in that capacity. And I know a lot of people want to say Derrick Henry. I'm not going to poo-poo that, because I do think that if Miami is looking to get bigger and stronger and looking to wear teams down, I think Derrick Henry is about as much of a no-brainer as you'll find in the backfield.
Just before I get to Chad, I would like to point out this is the second week in a row where people have said that they need the Miami Dolphins need a pounder to compliment Jay Ajayi. Jay Ajayi is not the pounder himself. So that's for all the people who were screaming at me a couple of weeks ago about how wrong I was. So, Chad, yeah, well, I just had to. Anyway, Chad, number 13.
As of right now, I don't think Miami has almost any choice but to get a corner at 13 that can come in and actually play on day one. I just can't see their plan right now coming into opening day, where in today's NFL you play three defensive back on the field probably 50 to 75% of the game, and those three being Byron Maxwell, Tony Lippett, and Bobby McCain. I mean, I'm interested to see what Tony Lippett develops in. I think he's a very good athlete. Bobby McCain showed some flashes, but to go in and have that be your plan for the season, and really without any significant depth behind them, they need to bring in a corner that can be on the starting lineup when the day starts. So anytime you're talking about trying to get a corner in the second or third round, you're really rolling the dice that whoever you believe you can get in the second round that you can come in and start is going to still be there. I don't have any idea who they're favoring. Obviously Ramsey's going to be long gone. He's probably the only I would call blue chip type defensive back in this draft. And then it comes down to who you prefer. I tend to believe it's going to be Hargraves, but if he's there, Mackenzie Alexander, I think, would be an option where they could bring him in, probably not put him in a ton of complicated situations, but have him play more just cover, like man-to-man type stuff, and hope that they can get him up to speed quickly. He has a ways to go, but Eli Apple, I think, is probably actually the most talented of the group, but I don't know that he's NFL ready either, so I have to think it's going to be one of those three players. If Elliott were to fall, and if they had their mindset on one of those corners, they may just go ahead and take Elliott. I believe Elliott's going to be there. I know that it would make sense for the Eagles to take him, but in today's NFL, the running backs are just they're more of a commodity. You can just interchange them out, and very few teams anymore do the slang term, the bell cow, where you're going to give that guy 25 carries a game. Everybody's jumping to the by committee role, to the more of a 10-15 carry type backs. And if that guy's only going to get 10 to 15 touches a game, that's a hard thing to invest your number one pick in versus other options. I do think there's Tony has some potential if Miami does trade back. If they make that move, I think Ragland could come and play. I think Derek Lee, the Ohio State linebacker. Yeah, I think he could be in play in the second round. I think they like both those linebackers could come in there in the second round. So those are my big things. But in terms of this draft, I think there's teams playing coy right now. I think more than ever in the NFL, this offseason has shown how badly needed the quarterback commodity is. And there's teams that are laying out there that want a quarterback badly that you're not even thinking about. The Cowboys want one bad. The Eagles want one bad. And I think it won't shock me one bit if you're going to see three quarterbacks off the board before Miami picks. And they're going to be very potentially be in this scenario of, whoa, we've got Hargraves, we've got McKenzie, we've got Elliott. Who do we take? Because the Rams desperately need a quarterback. I mean, it's laughable. They said the Rams are going into the Los Angeles market, and there's two other teams threatening to enter that market, and they need to get that market share now. And if you're going to go in and you want to get market share, and you want to compete against the LA Lakers, and you want to compete against the LA Dodgers, you need a golden boy at quarterback. And I almost desperately want to get a number one pick. They want to get a quarterback. And there's just so many teams out there that, they need quarterbacks. Arizona Cardinals need a quarterback. Carson Palmer's getting up there in age. And so that, I think, is going to play to Miami's advantage, and that I think there's going to be a lot of maneuvering for those guys to get up there. And I'll tell you what, if the guy the Rams wants on the board and Miami's in front of them and they're on the phone, Miami's going to be able to get some picks. Maybe they can get a 2 or a 3 out of the Rams, because if you're the Rams, what is a second or third round pick when you have your quarterback of the future sitting right in front of you and the team's talking about trading out? So it's going to be a very interesting draft to watch from us as a fan standpoint, because we kind of come in here and we have Tannehill, and we know we're going into this year with Tannehill as our quarterback. And so we're not in that position right now where we've got to be thinking we've got to get a quarterback. How do we maneuver to make sure we get our guy? And so I think Miami could, if the cards fall right, really benefit with this draft and get that defensive back. It wouldn't shock me if they could still get their starting defensive back and maybe fall back a few picks and pick up a mid-round pick.
So you essentially hoping that the Rams are playing chicken and seeing who flinches.
You can't tell me the Rams desperately don't want to get one of the 3 top quarterbacks in this draft.
Oh, I don't
absolutely.
I don't doubt it.
They pretty much have to. Like, they don't have a choice. You're going to go play in the Coliseum, which holds 100,000 people, and you're going to start Case Keenum. That's ridiculous. That's not how you want to start off the next tier run out in Los Angeles. I mean, that team can get away with giving up picks because they have, on the whole, very few holes on that team, which seems weird to say about a non-playoff team. But I mean, their offensive line has gelled and has gotten pretty good. Their skill positions at this point, outside of maybe a receiver spot, is pretty good. But
of course,
the quarterback position has killed them. And I mean, I wonder. I've heard that they're really interested in Connor Cook, which would kind of throw some people for a loop because they keep talking about how he's a day 2 guy. I don't think that'll happen. I think we always see these players get pushed up. We heard about Brandon Whedon being a day 2 guy, and he went 22nd overall to Cleveland. So somebody's gonna pull the trigger on Paxton Lynch and Connor Cook. But yeah, if you're Miami and you're sitting at 13, you're at a weird spot, because I mean, I think that if people want to get ahead of the Rams, you're the team they're going to talk to. The only other team would be Oakland, and I mean, with Oakland's needs, that team's probably going to target I think it's the defensive side of the ball right now. So, I mean, anything can happen. I mean, I wouldn't take Mackenzie Alexander, but I will in no way will I be surprised if they take him. I mean, if you think that he's your guy and he can work in your system, sure. But I mean, they're going to have options. That's the one thing everyone overlooks right now. They look at 13 like it's some sort of wasteland or something. I think the thing is that the talent gets more on a level playing field right around that spot. I mean, you're not getting these players who just blow everyone else away unless a Vernon Hargreaves falls or if Ezekiel Elliott's there. So, I mean, but there's plenty of good pass rushers, there's good corners, and you can trade back and maybe get one of those guys like your Apple or your Jackson. You can take any level of defense. And you can even take Ragland at 13 if you can't find a taker and he's your guy. I don't think that that's that big of a deal. It'd be a mess at 8, but at 13, I mean, it's feasible, and I wouldn't have a problem with it.
I think it's the situation with the Dolphins draft right now is that it's the opposite of the analogy you use. Like, there's people are looking at it as a wasteland. I'm starting to look at it as an all-you-can-eat buffet, and you just don't know what to go eat because you can't eat it all.
Which is why you got to take the best player available. And that comes down to who's the best player available on their board, because opinions will vary when it comes to that. You know, what position are they willing to draft the corners in a vacuum? And even though that those guys aren't, I mean, at 13, Jackson, not the best player on the board probably, and I would say the same for Apple. But I mean, if they're your guy, you're going to take them there, you know, unless you can trade back. So I mean, it really comes down to, I mean, who's on their board and who are they willing to pull the trigger on, which is why I have the whole Conklin theory. I'm not saying that to troll people. I think that guy is arguably the best player available at 13, if provided that guys like Hargreaves and Elliott don't fall, which could happen.
Well, as for teams needing a quarterback, well, there's always the possibility of the Rams bringing in Robert Griffin III.
Yeah, you know what though? That would be terrible too. But just because, I mean, so they get the quarterback after they got the King's ransom for the rights to draft him,
Right.
But I mean, the one thing that I mean, the guy's an exciting player when he's healthy. But I mean, it's the same thing that when he came out of Baylor, people said that he needed to put more weight on. He was too frail
and learn to freaking slide.
Yeah, and
like
when you're
literally
taking
doesn't know how to slide.
When you're taking that kind of NFL punishment, I mean, that'll break you down really quick. I mean, and think about Robert Griffin has absorbed an absolute fraction, a very small fraction of the kind of punishment that Ryan Tannehill has endured. Can you imagine what Robert Griffin would look like if he had taken 183, 184 sacks?
He'd be in a body bag.
There'd be nothing. There'd be smoke. There'd be a smoldering pile left.
It'd be the cartoon with the dead eye, with the eyeballs in the pile of ash. Bing, bing.
Yeah, and I mean that would be it. So I mean, if I don't think you can bring him in and really bank your future on him, because I mean the guy he's an outstanding player when he's healthy, but I mean he's been anything but healthy almost his entire career.
There's also Johnny Manziel.
That's an absolute PR nightmare, and I can't wait. I hope somebody signs him just so I can feel even better about the Dolphins situation. Now that I said that, the Dolphins would be like, "Hey, come in for a tryout." But I'm kidding. But
Keith, don't do stuff like that, because then tomorrow we're gonna find out that they're bringing him in. Like,
I just hope that you can't refer to him as Johnny Manziel, though. You got to call him JFF. That's how we refer to him around here.
Yeah, we're not gonna explain what that means on air. So
that's fine.
Yeah,
it's an acronym for a reason.
Anyway, I think that's going to be it for today. It's 9:44. We've been going for about an hour and 40 minutes now, so I think we're going to go ahead and call it a night. So for myself, my co-host Chad Ronenbaum, Keith Beebe of the Phinsider with the PH, who is a regular on our show now, and Tony, who is becoming a regular caller, and who knows, he may become a member of the panel soon, pretty soon too. So Tony, thanks for calling us, man.
No problem, guys. Y'all have a good one.
All right. So that's going to be it. So thank you all so much for listening. And as always, we will see you all next time for another edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. And good night.